Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Mays. I'm the clinical director at the Center for Relational Recovery outside of DC and the founder of Partner Hope. And I'm back with you today to talk to you about another topic related to betrayal trauma and healing from betrayal trauma. So, today I want to talk to you guys about what you, as the betrayed partner, how you get to ask questions throughout the disclosure process. So somebody had asked a question in the Facebook group about when do I get to ask questions around disclosure, and I was like, oh, that's a great video topic. I will talk about that. So I decided to address that today in our presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 different places in the process that you get to ask questions. One is during the preparation part of things. One is during the polygraph. And then during the actual event of hearing the disclosure document read to you. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those different places that you get to ask questions and how and what you get to do with those. So the first one is during the preparation of the disclosure. So during that time period, the cheating partner is working with their therapist to write out a document that outlines the scope and depth of the betrayal that has happened in the relationship. And usually the therapist is doing a lot of work with them on helping them come to a place of willingness to be honest, come to a place of willingness to be transparent, and really asking them to help themselves remember, give themselves permission to remember the things that they have tucked away or hidden from themselves, and to write a really comprehensive, truthful document. So that's usually what they are doing and what their therapist is working with them on. So in that part of the process, and let me just say this, just as a little caveat. So I have a disclosure prep model that I've created called the Relational Recovery Disclosure Prep Model. And so what I'm telling you is how we do it in that model. So you may have a therapist who works slightly differently, and so it may be there may be a little variety or variation in what I'm saying, but this should still help you have an understanding of when and where in the process you should get an opportunity to ask questions. And if it isn't happening, then you can advocate for yourself and ask for it to happen, because it is really important that it does happen in these 3 different places. So just a little disclaimer there about what I'm presenting to you. So in the preparation process where you get to ask questions as the betrayed partner, is you will have an opportunity at some point to write down sort of the burning questions that you have about things that are unresolved in your mind that you know about around the sexual betrayal and that you want more clarification about. So that usually is done. Your therapist usually will work with you on that question, that list of questions, and you guys will get it finalized together, and then your therapist will give it to your partner's therapist, and that therapist will then work with the cheating partner to make sure those questions are incorporated into the disclosure document and answered. So this part of the asking questions is a little fraught for betrayed partners, and I see betrayed partners go down some bad paths on this, so I want to tell you what to avoid, what to not do. What I see some betrayed partners do is ask every variation of every question they can think of that might cover any type of sexual acting out behavior, that might cover anything. I mean, I've seen betrayed partners come with a list of 100 questions. So when that happens, I think it happens for a couple different reasons. One, I think many betrayed partners have experienced being gaslighted and lied to, where they've asked a question and the cheating partner has answered it, and then later they found out that they were lying, that the cheating partner was lying, and the cheating partner says, well, you didn't ask me X, as though, oh, if you had just worded it this way, then I would have told you the truth, which is, not true. They were going to lie anyway. But so that's a form of gaslighting. But what it does for betrayed partners is it makes them feel like I have to ask the exact right question in the exact right way, or I can't get to the truth. And they sort of fall into the trap of actually trying to word things a certain way, when the reality is they're going to get lied to. If the person's going to lie to them, they're going to lie to them regardless of how they word it. That's just a bunch of gaslighting going on when the person tells you didn't word it correctly. So because many partners have experienced that, they then, when they come to this part of the disclosure process where they're getting to ask their questions, they will sort of ask every question they can think of, thinking that they have to ask the right question to get the truth on the document. So don't do that. That is not a good practice for you. It's actually really bad for your heart to try to go through and think of everything you can possibly think of that could have happened. It can be really re-traumatizing. And it is your cheating partner's job to tell you the truth in disclosure. This is their work to do. This is not your work to do. So when you're writing out that list of questions, you're really kind of doing their work for them. And you're really kind of doing the disclosure process for them. So this is not your work. This is their work. It is their job to write an articulate and comprehensive document that lays out, here's exactly what has happened during the course of our relationship, where I have broken our sexual relational agreements and been unfaithful or cheated in different ways and lied to you. That is their job to do that. So don't fall for that's like a bad path that I see partners go down, and don't fall for that and do their work for them and try to get into this place where you're asking questions in every way you can think of asking them, because the whole point of disclosure is for the lying to stop. The whole point of disclosure is for them to be coming and it to be a pivot point out of the dishonesty into honesty. So what you do want to do with this list of questions is you want to think about things that you know about, but that are still a little unresolved for you. So it might be something like, you might have doubts about, like, let's say your partner has said to you, I had an emotional affair, but I wasn't physically involved with this person. I wasn't physical with them in any way. And you have doubts about that. You have concerns about that. So a question that you may ask is, in this relationship with Sally or in this relationship with Ted, was there any sexual or physical interaction at all? Please, fill in the gaps on that. So that might be something that you ask them to clarify in the disclosure document. You might also have something where you're just not sure of the timeline around something. So you know that there was a relationship of some sort, some kind of extracurricular sexual activity of some sort. You know it was like in this time span, maybe between 2015 and 2017, but you don't know exactly when. So you may say, can you make sure I know when this began and when this ended? I need the timeline to be clearer about this. So it's things that you are already kind of know about, but you need to make sure they're big deals for you that you need to make sure are included in the disclosure. Most of the time when these questions are done well by partners and we don't get the list of like a bajillion things, and I'll give you a rule of thumb, most of the time this list is 10 questions or less when it's done well. So you don't need, if you're above 10 questions, you're getting into doing their work for them. So it really should be less than that. And most partners that I work with, they have 5 or less questions because they're really only writing down the things that are like burning issues that are a big deal that they really need to make sure are covered in the document. They're not trying to do the cheating partner's work for them. So if you think about that as a rule of thumb, that will actually help you with this exercise. So you're really just writing down the things that are unresolved or really burning questions that you feel like I need to make sure this detail or this piece of information is covered in the document. All right, so that is the opportunity that you get to ask questions during the prep period. And again, your therapist will give those questions to your partner's therapist, and they'll get incorporated into the document and answered in the document. Okay, so the second place you get to ask questions is during the polygraph process. So in our model of doing disclosure, we do not require polygraphs. We leave polygraphs up to the discretion of the betrayed partner. So if they choose to have a polygraph included, they desire to have a polygraph included, then we include it in the process. If they don't, we don't. it's a very personal decision, and we don't feel like we're the ones to make it. We feel like each betrayed partner needs to think about what it means for them and decide for them, and we kind of help them walk through the pros and cons of that. So if you are doing a polygraph, and the way that we do polygraphs, and again, not everybody does them this way, but the way that we do polygraphs is the polygraph happens after the disclosure document has been finalized. So after all the revisions have been done, everybody has signed off on it. Usually I see all the disclosures that come through the center and kind of look them over. So after everybody has signed off on the document and it's done, it's not getting changed, then the polygraph is scheduled, and it is scheduled to be done within a few days before the disclosure itself. So usually within 2 to 3 days or a week before the disclosure event is going to happen is when the polygraph takes place. So in this polygraph process, you have the opportunity to include in the polygraph 1 to 2 questions that you may have, again, about really pivotal, important information for you, burning question kind of stuff that are really, most of the time, these questions are like the make or break issues in the relationship for people. So the reason you only get to ask 1 or 2 is that most polygraphs can only really validate 3 questions. You can't really go over that. And one of the questions is, of course, about validating the truthfulness of the disclosure document. So that's being asked already. And then you can ask 1 to 2 other questions as well. These questions need to be yes or no questions. So you cannot ask something amorphous. You cannot ask something unmeasurable. So you can't ask, did you ever love me? That doesn't work on a polygraph. It has to be a yes or no concrete question. So for example, questions that I have seen people ask are if, like, let's say a cheating partner has a pornography addiction and has had an emotional affair as well, but has said that they have never gone live outside of the relationship with their acting out behaviors, that they've never actually had contact, physical contact with another person sexually. But you as the betrayed partner either you wonder if it's true or you just want to have that validated as true. Then you might have a question that you ask as part of the polygraph that asks, has there ever been any physical or sexual contact, any sexual contact is probably how it would be worded, with somebody outside of our relationship? So you're just checking that. Another question I have seen people ask is, has there ever, like, I've had people who have had questions about whether there was sexual contact with a sibling, with a sister, or somebody in the family, and that's been really important to them to figure out if it was true or not true. So they'll ask a question about, did you have any sexual contact with X person in the family? So those are the kinds of questions. I was trying to think of another example and I couldn't really think of one right now off the top of my head. So those are the kinds of questions that would be included on the polygraph. So again, kind of really significant burning questions, things you want to verify, and you only can ask 1 or 2 of them. So they have to be the kind of the real significant things. Again, your therapist will help you figure this out. They will help you figure out what questions to ask if you're going to ask any, and how to word them. And like, for example, I know that, like, once I get it worked out with my client, then I send it off to our polygraph person, our examiner, and I run them by him, and he'll sometimes come back and say, I think we should tweak this way, or I think we should tweak this way. And I'll sign off on it. I'll run it by my client if I feel like I need to. And then we'll have the question worded in a way that the polygraph can actually measure the result of the question and measure it appropriately. So that's the second place in the process that you get to ask some questions, is around the polygraph. And that also helps you kind of figure out where the polygraph happens in the process and in the timing of the process. Okay, so third place that you get to ask questions as a betrayed partner is during the actual disclosure event. So the way that we do disclosures at the center and in the relational recovery model is that we do a 3-day process. So you come on, let's say you come on Tuesday morning, we'll just pick a day. come on Tuesday morning, and you have a 2-hour session where you and your therapist and the cheating partner and their therapist all meet together. And that is the session when the disclosure document is read and you hear the disclosure as the betrayed partner. So often during the reading of the document, there's not a lot of room for asking questions. I know when I'm doing that with somebody else, sometimes like if a partner's like, well, wait, can I ask a question right there about like, do you mean this? They're just asking like a little clarifying question to make sure they understood the information. That kind of thing is fine. But if you're going to get into bigger questions that kind of take you off on a bunny trail about something, then we don't do that during the reading of the document. We kind of stick with, let's get the document read. We read it in chunks. We read it slowly. Everybody's taking their time. We want to make sure everybody's present and safe and grounded in the room. So there's no rush to get this document read. And so we do it slowly and carefully to give you a lot of support during it. So then day 2, you typically have an individual session with your therapist. And during this session, your therapist will have a copy of the document, of the disclosure document, and you'll be able to look at it with them. And during this session is when you get to really think about, what other questions do I have? So for a lot of betrayed partners, and the reason we do this over 3 days is because for a lot of betrayed partners, they hear the reading of the document and then, their mind just starts spinning and they're thinking about, well, wait a minute, was that when I was pregnant? Or was that when I was we were on vacation or celebrating our anniversary? Or wait, what is the order of this? What exactly happened here? They're starting to try to merge the timeline of what they thought that was happening with the timeline of what they now know is happening. So these two timelines have to merge and get integrated. And so there's a lot of processing happening for betrayed partners as they're doing that. And there's a lot of connecting of dots and starting to try to put things together. So inevitably in that process, you're going to have questions come up and you're going to have things that you need to ask and get clarification around or try to understand how these two timelines come together a little better. So when you're meeting with your individual therapist on the second day of the process, of the disclosure process, that's your opportunity to really kind of figure out, here are the questions that I need to ask and get more clarification around. I need to understand differently. I need to just figure out what was going on here a little bit better. So you get your list of questions together during that session, and you also get to process some of your emotional reaction to the disclosure, of course. And then day 3, there's another 2-hour session where, again, you and your therapist and the cheating partner and their therapist all come together and everybody meets. And now you're meeting to process the document and for you to be able to ask your questions. So in this session, you can start to ask questions to clarify and understand and try to get these two timelines to make sense for you in terms of when things were happening and what was going on in life and what did this mean, and can you explain this a little bit better, and what was happening around this, those kinds of questions. So you have the opportunity to do that during that 3rd session. Now, this is not the only time that you get to do this. It's not like never again can you bring any of this up. That's not the case at all. But this is kind of a formalized place for you to do it when it is all fresh and you're really in the thick of processing and trying to make these two timelines make sense and integrate this information into your understanding of your life and the relationship that you thought you were in. So it is a part of this intensive process, but it doesn't mean that if you have a question come up later, you're not going to be able to ask it. You're going to be able to ask it, and hopefully you're going to have other couple sessions and more time to process those kinds of things together. So if you haven't watched it, I did a video a while ago called Why Disclosure Does Not Heal the Pain of Betrayal. And that really talks about what happens after disclosure. So if you haven't watched that, you can watch that video to learn more about kind of the post-disclosure process and what should go on there. So this is the 3rd place that you get to ask the questions, is during the actual disclosure event. And as you try to make sense of and process what you have heard and understand it in terms of how it fits with your understanding of your life and relationship and what's been going on. All right, so those are the three places that you get to ask questions as the betrayed partner during the disclosure process. And I hope that is helpful and gives you some direction and a sense of empowerment around being able to go through this preparation process and go through it well, and know when you get to weigh in and get some of your needs met in the process of asking questions that you have. All right, I'll see you all next time.